Well, hey everyone, I'm Greg Jones for Engine Builder Magazine, and welcome to today's Industry Insiders. I'm joined by Janine Shoffner of J2 Racing. Janine, how are you doing this morning?
Good, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us today. Excited for our conversation here. I know you have kind of a jam-packed background, adrenaline filled, I'll say.
It's been a lifelong addiction, unfortunately, but apparently I'm still alive.
Yeah, well, that's all you can ask for, right? I understand that you've been a longtime skydiver. You've ridden motorcycles, you've done snowboarding.
A bit of just about everything, yeah.
Yeah, and then now obviously you're into car and auto racing. And that's going to be most of what we talk about today. But like I said, as a lifelong adrenaline junkie, I wanted to start there and just kind of understand a little bit about, how you got to be that way. What was kind of your background? What got you into that type of stuff?
It's funny. When I was 10, 11 years old, my sister was always my idol. She's 5 years older than me, so she was always doing the stuff that I wanted to do, but I was obviously too young to do. And when I was about 10, 11 years old, she had a boyfriend who had a motorcycle, and he would come visit her. It was a Suzuki TS 250, the old dual sport, dual shock, red tank, but that year, 76, I think it was, he bought a water pumper, Suzuki GT 750 triple water cooled two-stroke. And for some reason, I just went, God, this thing was parked outside our house all the time. And I'd go sit on it and everything. And he started up and let me sit on it and rev the engine and stuff. And I was just transfixed by this motorcycle. And it started a lifelong addiction to motorcycles. I saved up my money. Had some friends that had dirt bikes, trials bikes and motocrossers. And I saved up. I worked at a local fish and chip shop in England and delivered newspapers, washed cars, whatever it took. Bought my first motorcycle at the age of 14. Had no support for it whatsoever, no trailer, no nothing. And I would push it from our house to the local gravel pits, which was private property, but there was a gate, but I could push the bike underneath. It was a TY175, and I had a friend who had a IT 250, the Enduro two-stroke Yamaha, and we'd swap, and there was a whole bunch of other people that were involved in that whole scene, and I used to push it uphill for a mile to get to this. So I wouldn't drive it on the road because it was an automatic bus, that obviously not road legal bike.
Okay.
And I'd ride it until the gas tank was empty. And I was covered in mud and bruises and blood and cuts and stuff. And then I just kind of roll it down the hill back home and hose it off in the backyard, much to my mother's chagrin. She didn't appreciate that, but I don't know why they put up with it. Actually, I have no idea. I think I was out of the house, so it was good to see the back of me. But motorcycles were absolutely my first love. I was completely addicted. I was a strange kid, I guess, but I knew all the production motorcycles, the Japanese stuff. I wasn't so much into the English stuff. They seemed weird and out of date back then. So that started my adrenaline junkie kind of stuff. Motorcycles have been an element throughout my entire life. Street bikes, dirt bikes. I got into skydiving in my late 20s. Had a friend in the military who I met through work, and he said, you'll like skydiving, we should take you. So I did my first ever skydive as a tandem, but with the British SAS. So it was super cool. It wasn't like I was just trying to along to a drop zone. Right. So guys are my buddies, and I got to jump out with them, and I remember being all kind of gung-ho in the plane and just felt like it was going to be fun. And they opened the door and then you get a lot of wind coming in, and then they push you out to the edge. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute. ah, and over you go. But as soon as I was in free fall, my buddies jumped out also. We made a little four-way star with the tandem, which is difficult to do because tandems fall faster even with the drogue.
Yeah.
So it was cool, and I landed, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm pursuing this, and it led to thousands of skydives and hundreds of base jumps and traveling around the world, and that was that whole element then.
So Janine, I wanted to ask, can you compare the adrenaline of a skydive to, riding a motorcycle or racing a car? Is it similar or is it completely different? Obviously the sensations are different, but the adrenaline behind it, is that something that you can compare or?
I think it is very comparable. And I think that the sweet spot in any sport or adrenaline fuel sport is always the beginning when you're new to it. I remember my first 10 skydives, I remember the first 100, and then all fades. And same in motorcycling, when you get a new bike or you get a faster bike, you go to a different track and everything is heightened, and that's where you get the adrenaline. But once you've done something for a while, whether it's motorcycling, snowboarding, or skydiving, or motorsport, you reach a point of saturation because you have to spend so much time in it to get good. So the adrenaline fades away. The initial is this huge spike of adrenaline, and then it tapers off, and then you're learning, and then it becomes an everyday thing. Illustration of this is quite funny. When I was skydiving and learning to jump, I remember being in Ely, Arizona, a massive drop zone there, 4 or 5 planes running all day long. And I was like on my 7th AFF jump, and it was the first time that or 5th or 6th, it's the first time you're not hung onto by an instructor. You just jump out and they're there, but they're not touching you or whatever. And there's this guy in the back of the plane. He was a cameraman for one of the teams, and he would sit in the back of the plane, and he had a paperback book in his jumpsuit, and he would take it out and he would just read on the way to altitude. Yeah. I'm like, dude, would you go make a skydive? How can you be reading a book? It's next week it was a novel, and I'm looking at this guy like, how does he do that? Like, and I guess like beyond my comprehension that he would even. I was just like, we're skydiving. And sure enough, 3 years later, and I'm making 10, 15, 20 training jumps a day, and I've got a book in my jumpsuit too.
Yeah.
You spend 15 minutes getting to altitude, so you make 10 jumps in 150 minutes. This is time out of your life that you're wasting. So I think it's the same in most sports. When you get saturated, the adrenaline goes away a bit, and it becomes more like a job.
Yeah.
Very good job, but still a job.
Yeah. It'd be more impressive if you guys were reading the book on your way down, right?
Still possible at 45, 60, not going to get much read.
I don't doubt that. Well, Janine, again, it's my understanding that you found car racing a little later in life. Obviously, you were into motorcycles for a really long time, and you just did the skydiving stuff for a really long time, and that was really your passion for a lot of years. But car racing in the last decade has been the new passion that you've had. So can you talk a little bit about what got you into that and away from some of that other stuff?
Yeah, it's very random, really. I've always really loved mechanical stuff, cars, planes, bikes, and my husband and I, we have a big amphibious plane that we leased to Red Bull for a long time. It's a 100-foot wingspan Albatross, and Red Bull approached us to lease the plane for some of their promo work, and we said we would do that. They painted the plane in Red Bull colors, and John and I flew that as pilot and co-pilot for 5 years for Red Bull. We were almost every weekend, every week, going somewhere, doing something with the Flugtag or the air races, and doing splash and dashes in San Diego Harbor and that kind of stuff. And it was super, super fun. But it was a lot of hard work. Would not trade those those times for anything, because Red Bull really know how to look after their athletes and their employees. Super, super fun. But after that came to an end, 5 years we said was enough. Red Bull wanted to move on also. So it was very amicable departure. Still very good friends with all those guys there. And we kind of had 2 weeks at home with kind of nothing going on. And I said, John, like, you need a midlife crisis car. You're kind of at that age. You need to go. And he's not really a car guy. So he's like, oh, I don't know if I need to do that. I'm like, yeah, go. I guess let's find your car. So John being John, he's got to research everything for, like down to the last.
All the details, yeah.
Oh my God. So we test drove everything, Lamborghini Gallardo, Ferrari 45A, all this, the usual stuff. And John's taking it way too seriously. I'm more of a shoot from the hip person. I'm like, I like that one. Let's go take that one. And he's looking at all the facts and figures. So I get a bit bored and I leave, just go off and do something else for a few months. And he decides that he's going to get the Ford GT. And he ended up buying a 06, 07 Ford GT, which is a spectacular car. It's so much fun to drive.
Yeah.
And he bought one and I was like, okay, that's different. I was expecting, a Lambo or Porsche or something, and I really enjoyed driving it. But of course, it'll break the speed limit in first gear. So we got to go take it to a track because we need to drive it properly and within the realms of the law. And we did a track day. We did some track time at NOLA in Louisiana. And then we went to a chin track day in Road Atlanta. And then from there, we went to Daytona and we did a Daytona track day and knew not so much about tires and pressures and how to run a car and in these kind of banked conditions. And, that right rear tire was getting huge pressure because it holds everything. And people looked after us and said, hey, you need to check this and there. So we were kind of safe. But I think we were doing 170, 180, I think, on the banking. They're coming down on the, like, what is NASCAR turn 4. We were using the infield, the endurance circuit.
Yeah.
And I remember we shared it. He would do one session, I would do another session. And it's so much fun, just that speed on that track. I'm not a NASCAR person, but I appreciate the speed and what those guys do. And we're using the infield, and of course with that car it's great to rev match and just do everything, and then set out on that last loop and come down and see just the speedo hit those high speeds. And that really kind of set the tone. We met the photographer there was a guy called Mike Stolschmitz, Sideline Sport Photography, and he's loved the car, photographing it, and he said he organized a trip every year to the Nürburgring. So he takes a few people, 4, 5, 6 people, and he organizes hotel and he takes his vacation there and blah blah. Go do some laps of the ring, and John and I said, sounds like fun. We should do that maybe, and we did. And the following year, we ended up being there. I think, I don't know how many laps of the ring we did. We just got into it, decided to learn the track. Then we were renting cars from RSR Nürburgring. And at the end of that year, we did our first race there, which was an RCN race. And that winter, we had Sabine Schmitz and Fricadelli Racing build a race car for us, a Cayman. And we started VLN. We couldn't believe that you could do that, learn the track and then race on it. We thought it was, but there's an avenue to do that. So we pursued that, and we met so many cool people, and they were helped along the way. It's been a journey since then.
Yeah, no, it certainly sounds like it. Now, Janine, do you want to talk a little bit about the race team that you and John started, J2 Racing?
Sure.
I know it's both of you, but you also have some other teammates in the team, and want to talk a little bit about the series that you guys are involved in?
Sure. So J2 Racing is kind of a umbrella racing company. We don't own a wrench or a spanner or anything. So we use Get Speed Racing to support us, but the drivers and the organization is under J2. We have myself, my husband John as a driver. He's not driving this year and won't be driving next year because he is going to space. So he will be on the AX2 mission to the space station in the end of 2022.
Wow,
So
very cool.
he's busy learning how to fly the space station, which I can also do, but I enjoy the racing too much to leave it. So we were co-drivers in the car since the beginning. We've had several other drivers to help with endurance races. Right now, I am co-driver with Moritz Krantz, who's a German driver, very, very talented, very, very talented guy. And we also have for the 24-hour races, Maxime Soulet, and we have Marcus Paltala. So there you go. That's our lineup for the 24-hour races. Yeah. It's been a long slog to learn this track and to compete at it. There's so many layers of complexity at the Nürburgring. Not just in the track, all the weather conditions, but knowing the best support, the best car, the best engineers, the best drivers, co-drivers. And we spent 3 years in the Cayman and then went to Porsche Cup car. And the Porsche Cup car was fantastic. We had Ficcadelli supporting us originally, then moved to Guestspeed. And then from the Cup car, we moved to the GT3 AMG. Now, originally going to go to the GT3 Porsche, but felt that the AMG had better support trackside for the Pro-Am divisions. So we bought the AMG, and I love the Cup car, but the GT3 car is a whole other world. So you can run a Cup car with a smaller team, and you don't really need an engineer. It's better if you do, but it's a race car, but it's your first step in race mode. When you go to the GT3 car, it's a full professional leap. You cannot operate it without an engineer or two. We have 12 mechanics working on the car. It's a whole other ball game. But when you're in the car, you understand that. It's like a spaceship inside. And it's so much fun to drive. It's so keyed in, but also incredibly sensitive. Temperature changes, setup changes. We're always, and I think this is the part that most people who don't race don't understand. It's easy to watch a race and say, oh, they're not doing so well, they can't drive or whatever. And literally, if your engineer miscalculates something, it's not necessarily his or her fault, because they're juggling constantly temperature, track conditions, the previous cars that were on the track laying down different rubber. It's street car rubber, it's Pirelli rubber, it's Michelin rubber, it's all these different things come in, and they're juggling all the time. So they're making their best guess. So they miss it by a little bit, and the car can become undrivable pretty quickly. So you think about your street car you get in, or even if you take your street car that's modded to the track, it's mostly the same. Every time you get in it, you might feel it's a little slippery if it's freezing cold or whatever. But these cars are just on an edge. They operate in this fine little diameter, and it's really juggling that as a driver and for the engineers and for the team to really get all that together. And it took us a couple of years. But it came to a head this last year with them winning the championship. So
I was just going to ask, how long it kind of took you to go from your first entry into racing, into really start to understand what it takes to properly drive these cars and feel like you're understanding it and getting it.
I think that the initial Cayman years were just exploratory. You're just out there, and you have nerves if you're qualifying or starting, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. The track itself is insane. There's 26 kilometers of there's no other race track like it. Then you're learning the car, you're learning the track, and there's crazy weather conditions and et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's a layer cake. you put it on, you put it on, you put it on, and then suddenly after I think about 6 years, I remember meeting other people in the paddock that didn't have so much experience or whatever, and you see them and they're kind of grappling with the stuff I was grappling with 4 years ago, and I thought, oh, okay, I've progressed a little bit. And you never progress at the Nürburgring too. You never own it. It owns you. But I think that the first year in the GT3 car, I felt like it was a huge leap because the car is so much quicker and incredibly fun. But then I felt like I took a step back because you have so much more to juggle in a GT3 car. But this last season, everything came together. I always had great help with Fabian Schiller initially, and now Moritz Krantz. And we're always looking at data. I mean, people look at a race, but we've been there for 3 days already, and done some testing, and then the trailer is just blown up with data, video, data, and we're pulling data off 2 different systems, and there's 3 screens in there, and we're piecing it together. And I can see Maritz's min speed is 3 kph better than me here and that there, and you're just always trying to piece it together, and the engineers trying to get my setup for the car as best as he can, and the setup for Moritz as best as he can, and we drive the same setup all the time now, which is great, but pressures in the tires are a little bit different. So I wouldn't say that I owned it this season, but I say that it was a great season. And of course, the last race I did the entire race on my own, which has not been done by a woman in the GT3 class before, and that was a lot of fun and extremely exhausting. 4 hours in a GT3 car on that track.
Yeah. Well, congrats on that, and obviously congrats on the championship. You said, I think you can measure success by winning a championship. Absolutely. Like you said, there's probably always room for improvement here and there, but getting the championship is certainly the ultimate goal. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Did you really ever see that happening for yourself or for your team? Like, did you think that you guys were there, or did it all just kind of come together?
We came close in the Cup car, but had some unlucky mechanicals and accidents, and motor racing is always a crapshoot. You need excellence from the drivers, from the engineers, but also you need luck. You can get 24-hour race, you can get taken out turn 1, and so we didn't have so much luck in the Cup car. But this season, it was a concerted effort from me on the whole team to engineer the championship. We have everything in place now that we need to have in place. Let's make it crisp. And our strategy was not to drive as crazy fast as we possibly could. We drove as fast as we needed to. We really we had 0 accidents this year. And yes, of course, qualifying, you push like crazy. Of course, you have to drive very quickly, but then you have to it's an endurance race. So you have to make the right decisions and keep the car on the track. So I would say we backed off 2%, and it worked for us. So I had the Moritz on a little bit of a chokehold because I know that he was chomping at the bit to prove how good he is. And it was his first season in a GT3 car also. Well, I say also, but he'd been in GT4 and LMP3, so he's got a great racing history, but it was his first season in a GT3 car. But he wanted to show what he was capable of, and he really did. But I had him choked back just like 2% because I'm like, okay, let's keep it on the black stuff, because my goal was the championship. After 8 seasons racing at the Nürburgring and coming close before, I really wanted it. So we kind of engineered it. And we engineered it well, because come race 6 we were beyond touchable. So that was when I did race 7 and did the whole race on my own, which was super, super fun.
Yeah. And speaking of that, obviously you're you're a female in a more male-dominated sport, that is car racing. Have you faced any adversity in that regard, or have you felt like you're kind of maybe playing from behind as a woman in the sport, or has it
I,
not
I
been that
wish
way?
I wish I could have my life again and start karting at the age of 6. I mean, that would just be awesome. But of course, we can't turn back time. I don't know. Guys are guys, and I've always done like guy sports, eating, surfing, whatever. And I don't know. Yeah, guys can be assholes, but women can be bitches too. So I don't know. It kind of there is a bit of that when there is a bit of misogyny in motorsport. But at the same time, it's quite small now. There's a lot of women coming up, and I think that what I dislike more than the misogyny is the kind of like, oh my God, you're a girl, you race cars, and it's like, take a breath, let's relax. It's going to be in 10 years, it's going to be quite normal.
Right.
So I know I've never had doors closed, but you meet the occasional people in important places that are kind of misogynistic, but you just ignore them. Same in life, just concentrate on cultivating the people with the positive attitude, and the people with a negative attitude, and you show them the side door.
Yeah. So Janine, just to build on that, do you have any advice for any other, women, younger or older, who might be interested in getting into car racing? Do you have some advice for them in terms of
Yeah, if you're
navigating?
older, go find a lot of money. It's an incredibly expensive sport. We have sponsors, but that doesn't cover everything. And if you're younger, you need to get in the car right away, because you look at all the young drivers in the Formula 3, Formula 2, all those series. They all come from karts, and and that's where you learn your trade. And I love karting. Every time I get a chance to go karting, and I don't mean go-karting, I mean shifter karts. This is spectacular, and there are some fun go-kart tracks, kart tracks. Like the track at Spa is just phenomenal, and the one at Portimao, they also have a fantastic kart track. But if you're a bit, older for that, then you just gotta drive quick.
Yeah.
You gotta find some way to get out there, and it's seat time. At the end of the day, it's all seat time.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can drive, right?
Yeah, and you look at people like is it Chadwick? I forget her first name. She's in the W series that's running with Formula One, and she is gonna be on the Williams test team for 2022. And she has come up through Formula 3, I believe, and has got great results racing shoulder to shoulder with men. So I think, possibly we see our first F1 in a long time. It's been 20 years, I think. So that'll be the real, when people start seeing women driving Formula 1, then I think they'll see that's a big marker. And we have lots of fantastic other women GT3 racing, and Christina Nielsen, IMSA, great season last year or the year before. And there's Flörsch, the German driver. She's doing great stuff also in Formula cars. So no, it's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Janine, we've covered a lot of stuff that you've done in your past, and currently with your racing. But I want to know a little bit about what you're looking forward to. What's kind of on the horizon for yourself, maybe also for the J2 racing team.
Well, next year we have we're gonna take a break from the Nürburgring, because we finally got the championship, so we're very happy there, and we're going to move on to the GT Open Series, which is another GT3 series that happens all over Europe, and we'll be racing at Monza, Barcelona, Estoril in Portugal, and Spa, Hungaroring, a lot of the big Formula One tracks. And it's a great series. I did a couple of races with them a few years ago and really enjoyed it. It's a little less pressure than Blancpain, which is a huge field. And, you know, it's just race to the first corner, everybody crashes, full course yellow, okay, restart, everybody crashes, okay, full course yellow, and then everybody crashes, oh, full course yellow again. And there's no point in running down that road. I have a huge respect for, it's not called Blancpain anymore, for that series. But at the same time, GT Open is very fun to drive because they have quite a high BPO and balance performance and BOP, and I think the cars are up at the 540, 550 brake horsepower with quite a significant amount of downforce. And when we drove it a couple of years ago, I enjoyed driving the car because the Nürburgring, they have us kind of choked down to just at 5, and the car rides very high because of all the bumps and different exhaust system and different aero package. And like, it's fun to drive a Mini on the Nordschleife. But when I got in the GT Open spec car, I was like, oh, this is fun. And also, we only allowed the standard Michelin tires, whereas at the Nürburgring we have the specialist tires, which are super gooey. So the GT Open car moves around a lot more. So we'll be doing that series next year. We have full testing Estoril sometime in February, and then in Barcelona in March, and then the season starts Estoril end of April. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll miss the Nürburgring. We'll still do a couple of NLS races because the NLS Endurance Series, it's been part of my life for the last 9 years. So yeah, I'll definitely do 2 or 3 of those races. I'll also have to keep my permit current because you need a special permit to race in the Nordschleife anyway. So yeah. I'll be going back there, and it'll be fun just to race there without having a championship in mind or any performance. We'll just, Moritz and I'll go there and just go banzai.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, we all wish you luck next year, and yeah, it sounds exciting. Sounds like you got a lot of stuff on the horizon for yourself and for your team. So we wish you luck.
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Janine, I got a couple last quick hit type stuff. Obviously, you're originally from England, but you spent time in the US. I was curious in each country if there's a favorite city or a favorite area that you like being.
I'm from London, so obviously that's my pick for London cities. Although when I go back now, it seems crazy busy. I couldn't live there again, but yeah, it's that's the epicenter for me for England. But I've lived here for nearly 22 years now. In the States, I don't know if there's a favorite city. I like the countryside in America, the Wild West. I lived in NorCal for 10 years and just loved it out there. I was in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, you know, America's more about the wide open spaces, I feel. All the cities are fun too. I'm in Houston today, and it's a fun town. So yeah, I get to see a lot of it.
That's great. You mentioned motorcycling and that being a kind of a lifelong passion. Is there a favorite motorcycle or maybe a dream bike or something out there that
I just sold my last bike. I don't actually own anything anymore. I own 2 padded bikes, but I just wasn't using them. I had 7 in the garage, and they just were sitting. I was just too busy flying Europe, racing, other stuff. So the last bike I sold was the one I didn't want to sell, and that was my Hypermotard. This for me is the epitome of what a bike should be. You know, when I was I spent a lot of time in London when I was going through college. I paid my way through college by dispatch riding. So I was a London-based courier for 3 years through college, and then maybe 5 years after, paying things off. And so you're splitting lanes in London all the time, delivering packages 10 hours a day, and they're still alive, which is weird. And but I always used to like the dual sport bikes. I had an XDZ 660, which I think was just probably one of the best bikes I had for that. So the hypermotard is perfect, because you've got the slick tires and the suspension from, the street bike engine, but it's got that geometry of being a dirt bike. And
Right.
for me, it's super fun because you can get scratchy with it. You can ride it like a dirt bike. You can ride it like a street bike, and it's just a hell of a lot of fun.
Excellent. Again, we talked a lot about skydiving too, and I know you've done thousands of jumps. I was curious if there's a favorite jump you have, and then a jump that maybe scared you the most, or you had some reservations about maybe.
There's so many. I had three malfunctions in my time skydiving, and two reserve rides. I had to ride one malfunction in. Obviously got my attention pretty quick, but I think what grabs me more than anything is the base jumps, because they're all so individual. You're scoping out the object, you're establishing how high it is and the wind conditions and where you're going to land, and if it's an illegal spot, then how you're going to get out of there and not get busted. And so everything is so individual, and it's so cool. The skydives kind of all merge into a oneness for me. But I remember in England we used to jump off of an electricity pylon. It was a massive pylon that went across the Thames, and there was one on the north side, one on the south side, and this thing reached about 660 at the top, but it was always windy in the Thames, so there was a halfway station at 3, and it was not legal to jump off of it, but it was a favorite spot because it was kind of in this marshy land that nobody went to, so it's difficult to get busted unless someone knew you were going there. And we would go there, and 9 times out of 10 we'd pack to jump off the top, which was slider up, small pilot chute, and we get up the top, and it would be too windy. So we climb back down to 300, and we go, well, we're packed for the opening high, a high jump, a low jump. So we climb all the way back down again, repack the rig in the dark with the slider down, and change the pilot chute, and then climb back up to 300 feet. And this is all in the dark because you don't do it during the day. So we do this, and then you get to 300 foot, and like you've been there for an hour and a half, done a whole bunch of climbing, and repacked your rig, and so you're like, oh wow, now you get to jump. But that was always a crazy jump because you could see London in the distance, all the lights, and there's the hum of London always making a buzzing noise. And then the 300 feet is pretty sketchy. It's pretty low. So we'd be there, and some of us would do a go and throw. You go and throw right away. Some of us would hang on to pilot chute for other people so that it's an instant deployment. But I remember the first time I jumped from 300 off of that pylon. My buddy says, "Oh, you want me to hang on to your pilot chute?" I said, "No, I'm just gonna go and throw. I'm gonna just hang on to it, and I can go." I leapt off this thing. It's dark. London's glowing in the distance. Pitched the pilot chute. I could hear everything. I could hear the pilot chute open. You could hear the Velcro pulling off the back of the rig, and then I could hear just this lazy, slow canopy just floating off my back, and I'm like, it's getting pretty close. And the canopy opens, and we got the brakes, and then you landed right away. It was that's a memory. Fun times, and fun people too. That I haven't been in touch with for a long time. Elliot Clark and the boys, we'd have a blast. We'd all get to jump, and then down the pub for a couple of beers, and good times.
Yeah, certainly. And then, of course, I got to ask you a little bit about cars and tracks before we wrap up. So, is there a favorite car that you've gotten to drive, or again, a dream car out there that still have your eyes on, get behind the wheel of?
I like it all. That's the problem. I'd like to line up all the GT3 cars because they're all different, but they're all just so similar and with exactly the same BOP. I'd love to drive them all at a track and just see which one I prefer, because, you know, you don't really get so much choice. You know, when you sit down a road, you can't just flip from car to car all the time. So I'd like to drive the Ferrari, the Porsche, the AMG, and the Audi, and see which one I really like. As for tracks, apart from the Nürburgring, which is out on its own, it's not really a track, it's another dimension. But GP tracks, the Spa is by far the most spectacular GP track, but which is so much terrain. Second to that, Portimao in Portugal, spectacular track, lots of up and down there also. But I also love pancake flat tracks, like Sebring. You know, I like the old school tracks. I would race around Sebring every day, all day, or Spa every day, all day, in the rain, in the sun. I don't care. But I'm not so fond of the modern tracks like Kota. It's a great track and it's a fantastic facility. Doesn't really turn it on for me. And in Europe, you know, like Barcelona, we test there a lot, and it's a very technical modern track. And I like the old school stuff. Just, you know, Sebring, T17, you know, T1. Those things just, they grab your attention pretty quick, and then the whole track just flows. It has a flow to it. Spa, going up Eau Rouge, which for us is technically flat, and the first time you do it flat, you just feel like you've achieved something. You climb some mountain, because you have to get the technique right and to do it flat. And when you do, it's just it's very, very cool.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Well, Janine, with that, I'm out of questions. So again, I really appreciate you giving us some of your time this morning and telling us all about yourself and your racing and the adrenaline-filled life that you've had. So I appreciate you being with us.
No, pleasure's all mine. I appreciate it.